Welcome to Everything Cancer. This show is designed for survivors and those who love them, and to offer providers fresh perspectives and insight. Our spectrum of guests are inspiring survivors who share their journey, challenges, and how they thrive. Providers who give us insight into strategies for treatment, symptom management, and thriving through all stages of the cancer journey. Cancer care team members will give us behind-the-scenes insight into cancer care, because if you understand it better, you can be a more effective self-advocate. Leaders from cancer support organizations will share their stories and the resources their organizations provide. We'll talk about rekindling intimacy when cancer has changed your world, and we'll break down effective self-advocacy strategies into easy-to-follow steps. We'll talk about everything cancer. Thank you for listening to the Everything Cancer podcast. We greatly appreciate you being part of the Everything Cancer community. The information on this podcast is not intended to be used for medical advice. For any healthcare concerns you have, please consult with your healthcare team. The staff at Everything Cancer podcast will not be answering individual health questions. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Welcome to Everything Cancer, the extra large suitcase of the cancer journey. I am thrilled to have here with us Jen Kem, who is the executive director of the Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation and a cancer survivor herself. She has an amazing story. I welcome everybody who's listening on board, and thank you for being here. Jen, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jill. It's an honor to be on your podcast. I'm very excited to be able to share my story and also just what I've learned along the 20 years that I've been a patient advocate. Just to start, to give you my why, I was diagnosed in the year 2000 with breast cancer, and I was 36 years old. So my children were 5, 3, and 15 months old.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, so it was... we really didn't have we had no family history of breast cancer or ovarian cancer. But the issue that sort of made my experience unique is my mom was the director of speech and hearing at a hospital and had to have a chest x-ray once a year. And her chest x-ray came back that they thought she had lung cancer. And, my mother was argumentative. She didn't think she had lung cancer, but I convinced her to have the biopsy. When the biopsy came back, they said that she had lung cancer. They had removed a portion of her lung and all of her lymph nodes, and she had a tremendous challenge recovering from that because she had a really hard time with almost all pain medications. But the next day, the physician came in and said that it was her lucky day, that it wasn't cancer. And I thought to myself, her lung is in the trash can. I said, I don't know whether to hug you or hit you, so I didn't know how to react to that. And that's and so 2 years later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Thankfully, my mother was fine and lived on to many years later. But when I was diagnosed, I then took, I almost didn't have a lot of faith in the medical community, to be honest with you. So I really challenged people when people, I wanted things tested twice. I ended up having a lumpectomy, and then I needed to go further because there were not clear margins. So I ended up having a mastectomy. But then I actually picked up my slides from the hospital and then drove them to the other hospital in town to get a sort of a second opinion on my tissue. And it was conflicting. The ER/PR at the one hospital was both negative, and then it was PR positive, ER negative at the other hospital.
Wow, that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference.
Well, the odd thing is I asked the oncologist, I said, what do we do now? And he responded, well, let's test it a third time and see what happens. So it was ER, it was ER positive, PR negative the third time. So very strange. And so I said, how often does this happen? And he said, no one gets it tested twice, so I found, and that pathology is your map to the future,
Yes,
your map to what treatments are chosen for you and what what medications you're going to take, whether you take, because at that point they gave me tamoxifen,
Mm-hmm.
which I wouldn't have been a candidate for prior with the other
Right.
information. So I made it my goal, and I had no medical background, no science background. I worked in advertising, so I just dug into the information to try to find out as much as I could about my cancer and about what was happening to me in my body. And I did question the doctors quite a bit, and to the point it was rather irritating to some. I remember the plastic surgeon, he was like, "Okay, Jennifer," he's like, "you are so high maintenance." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Don't other people ask questions?" And he said, "Yeah, maybe 3, not 300." I said, well, they should know too. And so I call at this point, we did have the internet in 2000, but it wasn't as robust as it is now, and
Right.
didn't have, we didn't have social media. So honestly, I called the American Cancer Society quite a bit, got information from them. I tried to find trusted resources. And I did get second opinions. I did go to many physicians to find out what the right course of action would be for me. Um, you know, I found comfort in understanding, because I felt like if I felt confident in the path that we were taking, then so be it. That's, whatever happens, happens. But I wanted to know, I wanted to feel comfortable in the path that we were taking. So it did require a lot of work. And, when I counsel women today, I talk to them about, perhaps getting second opinions and things like that. And not everybody is interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, because ultimately the ball was back in my court, because I had to decide. If I had a conflicting, opinions from physicians, then ultimately I was the one that needed to make the decision, which is hard, because
Yeah.
I had no medical background, and so it was challenging. But I really I encourage people to ask why, to understand, to try to find out what the options are. Okay, this is what you're recommending, and not to be, not that our physicians aren't doing the right thing, because they are, but I do think that sometimes there's those nuances that can make a big difference in perhaps your treatment, or just even side effects and things like that. So
Right.
so that's how I really just tried to educate myself. I went to the Pennsylvania Breast Cancer Coalition has an annual event in October each year. I would attend that. I went to their scientific training, so that was a a course to try to get us, it's for lay people to be educated and to be empowered to help make decisions, and also to be a voice for other, cancer patients, breast cancer patients. I started, raising money. I became, and I raised a lot of money for the American Cancer Society. I was the volunteer of the year, I think in like 2002 or 2003. I had a lot of anxiety, so I had to put it somewhere. And so I chose to take that anxiety in fundraising, and then also really developing a group of my own. So that's where the Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation came from. After treatments were over, they sort of say, you're seeing a medical professional all the time. You're either getting blood draws, or you're going to the hospital for this, that, or the other thing. And there's a comfort in that. And then when they cut you loose and they say, "We'll see you in 3 months." And you're like, "Oh my God."
Wait,
it's like,
wait.
it's like that's like an eternity. And
Yes.
so what I did was really, and again, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have social media. So I just started asking friends, finding people who are young, how do I walk this path now? What do I do? Like, I don't know how to, my mind is like scrambled eggs. I don't know how do I deal with the future? What's going to happen to me? And that was just a constant black cloud hanging over my head. Like, am I going to live a year? Am I going to live 10 years? Like, am I going to, what's going to happen? And that anxiety it ruled my life, so I had to try to find tools and techniques and ways to control it. And really, for me, it was community. So we would meet at Panera for coffee. So there were other women that had either been further down the path before me, or just getting diagnosed, and we collected together monthly, a couple times a month, then for dinners. And that was my my saving grace, really. It was a lifeline, because I had people that I could call and say, we went to the beach, and with my three sons were growing up, and we were in the ocean all day long. And I came, I still have one natural breast. And so, when I came out of the ocean and I took a shower that night, there was something coming out of my breast. And I thought, oh my gosh, and so I instead of it ruining my vacation, I had someone to call, and they were like, listen, this is what you're going to do. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call the doctor, make an appointment, and then you're going to let it go and enjoy your vacation. And I was able to do that because I had like a sounding board, or, and there's a zillion of those things that happen along the line, because in cancer survivorship, if you get a hangnail, you can go from 0 to 60 very fast.
Right.
So that was always challenging. And so now, I'm 24 years out from my diagnosis, and I try to create a comforting space where women have the ability to find that information, whether it's with me or for other individuals in our group. And I really, really feel it's important to have a cancer community, whether it's one person or a group of people, and also individuals, medical individuals that can also guide us, because that's critical, and can really, bring a panic attack from 60 to 0 back down to 0 very quickly. And so as I, moved along in my journey in the cancer space, I really tried to educate myself. I went to the National Breast Cancer Coalition. They have a lead training, which is basically, again, for lay people, and they teach you basically how to sit on clinical trials and to determine where some of the funding will be going, so you become a patient voice. So I've been very blessed to be able to be an advocate and help women, and try to work with other medical institutions to try to gain the patient voice, so that we can have a say in what's happening and what's being funded and what's being done. And just to allow them, even just when it comes to patient care, like what, I get so much feedback from, this is frustrating at this hospital, or this is a challenge. And there are things that bubble up that are common at certain places. And I try to communicate those things back. And then also just even trying, in my work, I work at another nonprofit that we can try to develop programs that can help answer some of those missing, the things that are not being addressed or not being helped at the hospital level.
Mm-hmm. Your breadth of experience is amazing. And everything that you have taken to advocate for yourself and for other people is just amazing to me.
Thank you. It really comes from, it's a labor of love, and also just returning what was given to me during that time period. Cancer can place you in a dark black hole.
Yes.
And how do you, I didn't know how to get out of it. And I had many wonderful individuals, many nurses, many other cancer survivors and physicians that were really like steps out of that hole, and then taught me how to get out of that hole myself, right, which was even more valuable, which took a while, but it definitely can be done. And so that is, so I my hope is that I have the ability to do that for somebody else.
I love the breadth of your knowledge as well. That is so helpful to everybody you encounter in your personal life and in your support organization life. What are some of the most profound impacts you have seen out of Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation?
Well, some of the things that resonated, and really why I wanted to create the foundation, other than just having monthly coffees or weekly coffees, was that I kept hearing women in the chemo chair next to me that I found a lump 2 years earlier, but the doctor said, you're too young. Don't worry about it. That's not. And even in my own case, I had palpable lumps. I had 2 palpable lumps. I myself had mono when I was in college, and my lymph nodes never ever seemed to go back to normal after that. So I thought to myself, oh, it's probably a lymph node, and then I, a couple of weeks later, I was like, okay, I better check this out. So I did go to the gynecologist, and he had said, he touched it, felt it, and he was like, this is definitely a cyst. It's not a problem. And then sort of as like I think there was that little wink or nod, and he was like, well, you know what, but you should probably get a mammogram. And thank God he did. But not all physicians do that. I think more people are aware now, but at that point, that was really a huge part of our mission, to make sure that not only physicians knew, but women knew that, it's still a small percentage of the people diagnosed, but if it's you need to know now, and you need to pay attention, and you need to also advocate. So one of the biggest, challenges is trying to help these women advocate, to either find another, if they're turned away from one physician, find another physician, or push with that particular physician, or find a way to get a mammogram at the minimum, because insurance wasn't paying. Like for me, I was 36, and if my doctor hadn't ordered it, it would be hard for me to get it and get it paid for. So that was one of the primary things at that point, just education and awareness. Unfortunately, and I don't have statistics, but I do think more women are being diagnosed younger, and I do think more physicians are aware of it. And so, I don't know if that problem has been solved, because it's unfortunate that we do have more women. We help women in their 20s that are diagnosed with cancer, 23, 24, 25. Some of them diagnosed right off the bat with metastatic disease, which is shocking to me. And it's very extremely challenging, particularly to be diagnosed in that stage of life where you're just starting out, whether it's with your career. Financially, it can be devastating, as well as from a family perspective. If you go through treatments, but your fertility is really challenged or taken away, it's a huge, it's life-changing, really. So it is some of the things that we try to educate women about, so that they know how to advocate for themselves on those issues.
I'm so glad you're there to help with that. And it is a real problem. It is a real issue that women are being diagnosed at a young age, and oftentimes in a metastatic, hopefully not, but with a metastatic disease. And that in of itself is so much to deal with, not to mention that, as you were saying, the stage of life they're in, and all of the things that go off the rails for them, is all their dreams, all their career, their family hopes. It's a lot. It is a lot. And I'm so glad that Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation is there to help them through. So in your experience with your current foundation, and then the other not-for-profit you work with, what do you consider to be the largest impacts that these support organizations can make for people on the cancer journey?
Well, I mean, I think, just what I was talking about before, getting a cancer community is so critical.
Yes.
And then I by in defining that, I mean cancer friends, so to speak, or people that are experiencing the same thing. It doesn't have to be the exact same cancer or the exact same stage, but those people can really sort of normalize your experience, because it's so hard. Well, it doesn't matter what problem it is, but we tend to think we're the only one, or it's just so isolating. And when you recognize that, wow, there are a lot of people that are dealing with this and they're doing okay. They're like, in one of the support groups that we had a woman who was intent on playing golf as much as she could, and that was so inspiring, not only for us, but for all the other individuals in that group, because they recognize that, she's not letting it stop her live her joy or what she wants to do. And so I always say courage is contagious, because it's so, I think sometimes we go down into the fetal position and we're sort of racked by fear. At least I was. And I can vividly remember when I was done with treatments, and we had taken a trip with the boys and my husband and my parents to Hilton Head. And my husband was like, let's go rent bikes. And I was like, wait a minute. can I ride a bike? And he was like, what are you talking about? But my body was like glass to me. I was so like, my body had betrayed me. I didn't trust my body. I didn't know how to handle my body. Like I really felt like, what if I fall? And he was like, well, I'll help you up. And he didn't understand. And I was really trapped by fear, really, because, and so how did so if you could see these other people stepping up over the fear, then you think, well, maybe I could do that too, and so that's fabulous. And also, if you're in a support group which is led by a medical professional, whether it's a nurse navigator, or a mental health professional, I mean, they have tools and also excellent advice in terms of not only just what to do in the moment, but resources, whether it's the hospital, whether it's asking the physicians for different things. I mean, I always tease because we work a lot with the hospitals in town, and I say, why do you hide all of these resources? Like, why can't, and I know a lot of people, when they're diagnosed, they get like a large binder, and sometimes it's very overwhelming. And if you don't need it at the moment, you can only deal with like one thing at a time. So I totally get that, but there's so many resources, so many things. Like, you and I were in a support group, and there was a woman who had dealt with, ongoing diarrhea for so long, and it really inhibited her ability to leave the house. Really, I mean, she was really incapacitated, and ultimately, through our support group, she learned of a particular provider that could really support and help. And as you can imagine, she fell to tears. It was life-saving for her, life-changing, where she had the ability. She wasn't learning that through her own physician's office. Sometimes people, there are social workers, there are nurse navigators that can help you, but not everybody gets one, because they're just, there's not a one-to-one scenario. So you do have to learn how to be the squeaky wheel. And by that, just advocating for yourself. You don't have to be aggressive. You just say, listen, I'm having these issues. I would like to either talk to a social worker or see if I could gain some support through a nurse navigator or palliative care, because there are so many ways that you can gain help. And even though it seems like maybe that's something you just have to live with, it's right. And unless you ask, unless you tell, and I know some things are embarrassing to talk about. I know that myself, I had cognitive issues after chemotherapy, and I really didn't want to share that with anyone. I didn't want to share it with my husband. I didn't want to share it with my family. I didn't know what to say to my doctor. I kind of thought it was just me. I didn't know. I had no idea that other people experience this too. I had heard of
chemo brain is a thing. Yeah, it's
right.
a thing.
And I had heard of it, but I didn't really know much about it. And to be honest with you, I didn't necessarily know that what I was experiencing was chemo brain either. You know what I mean? So, it just was, and then I later got into a support group where they discussed chemo brain, and I can't tell you how validated I felt.
Yeah.
And it was years later, so, but it just made such a significant difference. Particularly even the medication, like the person that was leading it talked about how tamoxifen can also lead to that, which I had taken for 5 years. So you figure like, oh, say chemo's over, so I should be, doing okay. Well, I was taking this medication that was causing it that I had no idea, and I think, sometimes physicians and oncology nurses don't want to tell you all of this because they don't want to scare you or sometimes if you're thinking about it all the time, you actually make it worse than it is. But it is very, I don't know, it was just extremely validating to recognize that this in fact was, I'm doing pretty well based on, based on everything that happened to me, but at the time it was extremely challenging. So I really try to give people a safe space to talk about that, whether it's in the support groups or personally, and then also give them the tools and to be able to talk to their physicians about it, or even like, when physicians, like even in the groups, or I do personally, is how if you're having a things are 100% right with you and your physician. How do you handle that? What do you say? You feel like you're being rushed. You feel like, they're not taking you seriously. I had a friend who had called that said that they were now metastatic and they felt like the doctors just like, oh, okay, well, sort of dismissing them as like, oh, you're metastatic. And so do you have a conversation with that physician? Do you change providers? Like, what do you do? And let's talk about that. Let's try to figure out what your next step is, because in the end, you matter. It's your life, and it doesn't, there's so many things that are to be learned and to be gained from, the support groups, and then just talking to other individuals in the community that, whether they're medical professionals or whether they're, just people experiencing cancer. The other thing too is just, sometimes it's even nice to see how people with other types of cancer, what their experiences are, men and women. I think that helps too, and to recognize that that we all, no matter what type of cancer it is, it's a challenge.
Right. I feel like that so many people that could benefit from support groups don't participate. And I really hope the word gets out there through both my book and through this podcast that support organizations and support groups can make a huge impact. As you were talking about the shared experience, resources, access to information, you don't know what you don't know. And that's can help you understand better. And your physician may not understand what exactly to share with you either, or may not even realize that you have a gap in understanding, and that support organization can help you overcome that gap, or the people in your support group. And thank you for talking about self-advocacy, speaking up, asking questions. That's one of the reasons why I put the book together, Cancer Journey, Guide and Journals, Empowerment in Diagnosis, Treatment, and Beyond. Are you going to hold it up? Thanks, Jen.
It is a bestseller in my house. It's definitely, you've been able to beautifully articulate almost what I've been practicing over the past 20 years, plus a lot more because of your years of medical practice. I mean, and I think when we're talking about gaps, you've really addressed so many of them, and it's really, really powerful.
Thank you.
It really is a huge tool for patients and caregivers, really. It can make a significant difference in how you feel and how you're able to navigate this journey.
I really appreciate that. And I appreciate your feedback on it. You've been such an inspiration to me for so many years. And I don't practice medicine, just to clarify for our audience. I am an oncology certified nurse. So I work in the cancer care continuum. But in any case, I'm finding everything you're saying so powerful, and working in support group environment with you, Jen, we have seen so many transformations of people that have just been amazing, and where we've seen people gain strength while we're talking with them, and gain the ability to ask questions and not be intimidated anymore by that environment. We've seen people come out of their shells and go from very quiet and withdrawn to being one of the most engaged people in the entire support organization in the space of a year. And not that that's an expectation. It's not. Everybody has their own bandwidth, but just the ability for that group, the shared experience and the support you get in that group to move forward and to learn how to advocate for yourself and to live life again.
Exactly. Yeah, it is phenomenal. And that's really two things that keep me close to the cancer space. One of them is just to see the amazing strength and the human spirit, and what people, how they overcome things, or how they manage through things, and really valuing life, recognizing that, it can all change in a dime, and let's just be present today. Mm-hmm. But then the other thing is the being able to see the people bloom again, and being able to witness that is there honestly, there's nothing like it. I
No,
mean,
there
like
isn't.
you were, like we have, I mean, I have countless, uh, stories I could share with you. And so much of it is rooted in not only the therapy as well as the support groups, because it gives you tools,
Yes.
because when you're thrown into this, and that's exactly what your book does. When you're thrown into this, I liken it to being tossed. Like, it was just like, I fell out of the plane and I was dropped into Russia, and I don't speak Russian. So what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And I knew that, I was in a life-threatening situation. So I needed to understand the language. I needed to understand the customs. And all of that is in this book, and is in therapy and in the support groups, because
Yes.
these people have walked the path before
Yes.
you. They've figured it out. None of us have it all figured out, but the
Right.
reality is, even just one small detail, like that woman I was sharing before with that one small medication that really nobody else knew about, it she was able to function normally. For 2 years she was in her house. I mean, that's, and
Yes.
and just to see, like, people, and cancer is a beast, and
Hmm.
the reality is, you really don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes physicians will put an expiration date on your head. And how do you deal with that? Because it's not always right. And,
Right.
we can't always really predict the future.
Right.
So there's that space of, what do I do? Do I believe them? Do I try to outrun them? Do I try to, like, what do I do? Like, how do I do this? Because, so, we have one person that really was living that situation, but was able to get it erased. You know what I mean? Like, get that expiration date erased, which is honestly, it's a miracle, and it's so amazing to be able to see that, and to be able to experience them, having the courage to get back into
Hmm.
the game of living, so to speak. Because I think
Right.
sometimes, when all of this is bestowed on us, you're just frozen, and it's really hard to know how to, with all the decisions and things that we have to do on a daily basis, making, working, making, making choices, where to live, what to do, like, it just is extremely hard when you're frozen. But I think through the tools, the book, the therapy and the support groups, you can get unfrozen,
Yes.
regardless of what your situation
Right.
is, regardless if you have metastatic disease or not.
Right. Thank you. That's so nice of you to say. And I agree. I think a key point you are expounding on is how important it is to live life. There's no guarantee for any of us. So it's important to engage in life and enjoy it, and enjoy your family, and grasp as much as you can, no matter what your situation is, and get your symptoms managed well enough so that you can do that. Advocate to say, I don't feel well. I need, whether you're in treatment or you're 10 years past treatment, talk to someone, and also journal is a huge tool of that, so that when you talk with your provider, you can actually share what's happening, and it's real data, and they can help you more too. um, I have seen amazing transformations too that always stay with me. And the engagement that we see through activities, through a support organization, the shared experience, the sharing of, this is what I did, or this is what I said, or this is what helped me feel better. Um, Obviously, always talk with your provider to make sure that it's the right thing to do, but that can be so helpful to get that kind of feedback.
Yeah, and we should expound upon that. The symptom journal. I know you're a big advocate for that, and you really taught me about that. And the reality is that can, your physician is only with you for a very short
Right.
period of time. So this is so critical to be able to sort of crack the code to what's going on, whether it's a
Yes.
symptom, whether it's a pain, and that, it sounds like, oh, what is tracking my symptoms going to do? But the reality is, it can
Does
really
a lot.
provide a lot of data.
Mhm.
Right. And that is, something really, I think, really important to do. And I think, you have many different ways to do it in your book, which I think is extremely helpful. And it just gives your medical team a lot more
Right.
information to go on.
But you don't even need the book. You can just use a simple journal to write things in and write notes in. And that makes, and thank you for saying something about the book, but just having that data, it's huge. And then also write down your questions for your doctor in your journal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it helps to keep it all organized and
Yes.
to keep it all in one place. Because I know sometimes I'll go to doctor's appointments, I write in this notebook, I can never find it again, I have to go. So it's all in one place. If you can put it in your journal, or if you just have one book
Right.
for it, it's extremely
Right.
helpful. And that, when it comes to trying to advocate for yourself, and even though we all have the electronic records that we can look into and stuff, it doesn't. Your input still matters,
Yes.
and your input is what, you can sometimes put that in that chart, but for the most part, we should be paying attention to our own self. I was reading a book, then they were talking about almost looking at your body, because I can remember, and I hope my brother-in-law doesn't hear this, but like my brother-in-law used to track, like he ran Ironmans. So years ago, like 20 years ago, he had a blog online, and he would, put down how much he drank and how much came out. And we were just kind of laughing about it. But the reality was he was really trying to get as most that he could out of his body. Like he was trying to, it was, trying to sort of treating it like a machine, so to speak. And I read this book recently that cancer patients should look at their body that way, that they should, just really almost treat ourselves like high level athletes, so that we can understand, like we can listen to what our body is saying, and pay attention to the signals, and whether it's not necessarily measuring all that kind of stuff, but just recognizing, you know, like if you I was taught, like if you have a pain for more than 2 weeks, then you should call your doctor after a cancer diagnosis. But is it like, what kind of pain is it shooting pain? Is it come and go? Is it constant? Is it like, all of those things make a difference, and they will ask you, so it's best if we already have that information up front, and we can make, more educated decisions.
Absolutely. And you touched upon another key point of treating yourself like an athlete. Exactly. So making sure you get good sleep, making sure you eat good food, making sure that you practice good self-care, and that you get rest when you need it, that you exercise. All of those things help you tolerate treatment better, and they help you feel better through your survivorship, and they improve the quality of your life significantly.
Yeah, and all of them can be helped in one way or another. If you're having, I mean, I'll be honest, it was very hard for me to sleep. I was racked with anxiety. Like, when my kids were little, I would read them books, and I would fall asleep in their bed, and then I'd wake up at midnight, and then I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Like, how's this going to play out? What's going to happen? And so stress really impacted my sleep.
Yes.
And so I really had to work on talk to the doctors, try to get different tools and techniques and things that could help me, gain sleep, so that I could repair. It's important to do that. And there's a lot of tools out there, but, definitely talk to your physician about it. But those things, trying to eat, and it does put a lot of pressure when you're going through something like that. You're like afraid. Some people get paralyzed with food. Like, I can't, they don't want any sugar, or they're trying to eat like everything organic, and it becomes expensive and challenging for your family, and maybe inhibits you from going to a friend's house for dinner because you can't eat that kind of food, or this, that, or the other thing. But I think everything in moderation, but it's important just to learn if there's a challenge in that area, talk to somebody about it, see if you can get it worked out.
Great points. Absolutely great points. So what are some of the most amazing transformations you have seen through support organizations for individual people?
Oh, I mean, I've seen a lot. I've seen, like, particularly, I mean, a couple people come to mind. A woman who had metastatic breast cancer. She was originally diagnosed 15 years prior, and then it had come back as metastatic. And she was really frozen, and she had a family, and was really not functioning. And she was, crying all day in bed and not knowing what to do. And she, through a lot of support, whether, support groups as well as therapy, she is still, I guess it's 6 years for her now, and she has been working, functioning, doing everything that she needs to do, and has really, through the guidance of support groups and therapy, has sort of reorganized her life to reduce the stress load, because she was managing a very large stress load. So she reorganized and was able to make it work with a different job, and was able to find ways to, just through just trying to identify, what some of the tougher areas, and reduce those. And I mean, there's countless stories of just amazing. But you also have to recognize, the loss. I mean, we do have loss, and how do you help someone through that? The patient, as well as the caregivers and loved ones. I mean, that's important support as well. It's not, that's still a very big area, whether it's, a support organization, or whether it's private therapy, or that's really, really important to get help as well.
So it's not just loss of someone passing on, but it's the loss of the life that you had before your diagnosis, because you're a different person after your diagnosis. And how do you deal with that effectively? And how do you go on living and engaging and being in life and enjoying life? You have to acknowledge that. And the resources that you're talking about help you do that. What are ways that you advise people to access counseling resources if they can't afford the copays to see a counselor?
Well, in many cities, like the nonprofit that I work for, we do 6 free sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And across the country, there are many organizations that do something similar. And you can, I mean, I would just, Google where you live, and then try to, because most therapy is only done within state lines because of the laws, in terms of who can, take where the licenses are for that particular individual. But it's really very helpful to put you into a better headspace. There are similar organizations, like I said, all across the country, and some national ones, depending on age and stuff like that, which may or may not do therapy, but the support groups are there. And it's, because like the metastatic space has particularly changed since the 20 some years that I've been advocating, because thankfully more and more women are living longer.
Mm-hmm.
However, because initially, I believe, a metastatic breast cancer diagnosis was 36 months of survival. Now it's over 5 years, which still is not, obviously, for a young woman, is challenging. However, some of these women, you're in pretty hardcore therapy, and sometimes you're taking these medications. A lot of times they'll take oral pills as opposed to going for chemotherapy, and they don't lose their hair. So many of their family members are like, "What do you mean? You're not dying. You're not sick." So there's this really odd space where you look normal, but you're actively, you're very sick. Your life is threatened. Yes, and you're dealing with these side effects that can be very difficult. And what do you quit your job because you still need, going on to Social Security disability is an option, but it's very minimal. So how do you, particularly if you're young and you have children, how do you, what do you do? And, I've had women that I've worked with that their bosses were like, what do you, like, do you really have cancer? Like, are you making this all up? I mean, and it's horrible, because these women are like thinking, well, I can't even believe this guy is like, questioning whether I'm lying or not, because so it's very strange. So, and as you well know, it can change on a dime. Like it can change. Yes. And so these women sort of walk that line of being able to, live the best life that they possibly can, and trying to enjoy things with their family, because they know that it could change in a heartbeat, but they also have to recognize that potentially they could live several years, and they still need, like, they can't spend all their money and go to Hawaii. They need to, figure out how to, so it's a whole new space. And so it is it's a head game, and that requires, because you don't look like the classic metastatic breast cancer patient that's bald and is in a wheelchair or whatever. You you look pretty healthy in many circumstances. So it is it's a hard space, and it's hard because, so thankfully I know women living 12, 14, 16, 18 years with metastatic breast cancer, but they've lived that one day at a time. I mean, they
Right.
never, you know what I mean? So
Right.
that is a whole.
And you have to stay on treatment during that time.
Right.
And the shared experience of being in a metastatic breast cancer support group, they can all relate. And that woman will get incredible support in that group.
Yeah. And, I think you had asked a question a while back about, some people are reluctant to join these groups. And I would, it's been our experience that, the groups that we're a part of, I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just a bunch of people complaining or whatever, because I think support groups get that connotation at times, but it's really not. I mean, it is like in our situation, the individuals are sharing their challenges, and many people are chiming in with solutions.
Yes.
So so even though you might be, they might be able, and thankfully they feel comfortable to share some of these deepest challenges with us. But we're trying to find solutions, and that is the beauty of it. And it's amazing to me how many people have, come into the support groups and said, oh my gosh, I don't know why I waited so long.
Right.
Like what was wrong with me? Like I had no idea. And a lot of people, sometimes, we have support groups in person, we have support groups on Zoom. And sometimes people will come on Zoom and then just keep their camera off and they won't say a word. And that's fine. You can just,
you're there.
Right. You can just observe, and you don't have to participate at all. And, again, there's the incredible support groups across the country.
Yes.
So if I would give one a try for 3 or 4 sessions, if it doesn't work, find another one. The mix up of people is always different, and the vibe of the support group is different. And you could definitely find one that works for you.
So the particular support groups that you and I have participated in together, Jen, I love how that we start out with saying hello, just like you do in normal every day. How are you? Sometimes there's banter and laughter. We go into someone presenting great information, or we go into what's your news? And so people sometimes share really hard stuff to say that maybe they can't say to their family, or can't say as honestly to their family. And then from there, we move into oftentimes banter and laughter again. There's this shift where you go from warm to, okay, here's the news that's not so hot, but everybody else uplifts them. And it's truly uplifting. And then we go back into banter and laughter. And we really do try to close on a warm, happy, good note, so people can walk away feeling good about things. And I love that actual shift that occurs. I find that incredibly valuable, and people keep coming back, so they must they must as well. Another organization I wanted to bring up is cancercare.org, which has oncology trained social workers who will do counseling with you. And then also they have virtual support groups that are both Zoom type meetings and then message board type support groups. They are nationwide, and they will also provide some counseling. Can't say it would be long ongoing counseling sessions, but they'll get you started and help you identify maybe what would benefit you the most. But that's a great organization to start with too, cancercare.org.
That's good. That's definitely good to know. And I think, there's so much out there, so much available, that people just need to start somewhere. And it might not be a home run the first time, but it just like anything else, if you just continue to try and continue to learn, you're going to be in a good spot.
So thank you for everything you do, what you've devoted your career to. Thank you for all the support you give women with breast cancer and Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation, and the awareness that you create. I think it's a phenomenal organization. I know it's a phenomenal organization. Thank you for sharing the importance of these support organizations, of counseling and of journaling. And is there anything we haven't covered that you would really like to talk about?
I don't think so, but I mean, I think it's just important to, really try to advocate for yourself and try to
Yes.
find the best scenario that you can for your treatment and for your uh, to share your, what you have, and don't go through it alone, as they say.
Right.
It is
Right.
it's extremely isolating and extremely lonely to have cancer and to go through, and like you were saying, some of the losses, the obviously the passing of a person is one thing, but there are so many mini or micro losses in the cancer space. Perhaps you've lost your job, perhaps a relationship has changed. Many friends who you were close to might not know how to deal with it, so they back away. But oddly enough, some other people just sort of climb out of the woodwork, and
Right.
there can be new relationships built.
Hmm.
And if we just take that first step, it's hard, it's scary, but you can do it. And it's definitely, I mean, and I would definitely recommend this book, and
Thank you.
trying to get, there's a lot of stuff coming at you if you're newly
Yes.
diagnosed. So just take one step at a time. Just try to understand your disease. And honestly, probably one of the first things I would do was get your book, just because I think it's a
Thank you.
great framework, and it does not have to all be done at once. You can look up certain things, like, this is my issue, and then you could just look that up and try to seek more information about it.
Thank
But
you.
there are a lot of people that want to help you. No one wants you
Yes.
to have, no one wants you to go through this alone, and no one wants you to suffer more than
Right.
you need to. And there are tools and uh, things that can make it easier. So reach out. Come and
Yes.
join us. It's
Yes. Yes.
definitely helps.
I would say support groups can give you, and support organizations can give you courage, as you talked about, in advocating for yourself. The book is a guide of self advocacy. American Cancer Society and so many other organizations have information on how to advocate for yourself. American Cancer Society is a great place to start. Just starting, you can go into all kinds of rabbit holes there, but their information is succinct. It's easy to read, it's easy to go through, it's easy to find things. I love them. And the there was one other thing I was going to bring up, and now I can't remember what it was. But that self advocacy piece is so important, and getting courage from other people so that you are not isolated and they understand. Once you open your mouth, you don't need to explain anything. They've been there, they know. You just need to talk about your exact problem. And I know what I was going to say. The other piece of grief that I think a lot of people, and you brought it up early in the conversation, is when you're cut loose from your treatment team, you grieve that loss because they have been such a foundation of support for you and of reassurance. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And a support organization is the perfect place to turn to. It's reassuring, it's with people that have some expertise and or a shared experience, and they'll welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think a lot of times, like in our case, obviously you have medical experience, and we have a lot of other individuals that do as well. And so it can sort of, be that safety net, so to speak,
Yes.
and another place to ask questions. Like, in a couple of weeks, we're having physicians come in and talk, and so you can ask questions. And I always found value in being able to ask other physicians,
Mm-hmm.
that are dealing with the same type of cancer, questions, so I could double check my physicians.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
and so there's a lot out there. It is hard, depending where you are on the journey. If you're
Mm-hmm.
recently diagnosed, I think it's still very valuable to get connected. But even more so, like you said, when treatments are over, it's almost like, it's definitely a huge safety net,
Right.
and can be a really great support tool to get you back to joy again.
Yes, yes. And your point about asking physicians other things, second opinions are so important. When you are
Yeah.
initially diagnosed, your physician should not go on the defensive that you're getting a second opinion. Your oncologist, they should actually be happy, because it will build confidence in the treatment plan they've developed for you. It may shine light on other aspects of your diagnosis or a need for treatment that can be really helpful to you. Second opinions are incredible, and there's a lot in the American Cancer Society, cancercare.org, in my book, about the value of a second opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I saw 3 physicians for each step that I made, and I haven't found anybody else that has done that. But that was on the heels of, a medical mistake
Right.
that really sort of rocked my family. But it did teach me a lot, and it did, you know, show me that there are different nuances. Like, for instance, um, sentinel node biopsy it's just in clinical trial. So we had one physician that was participating in the trial and 2 that were not. And not that I, that's a clinical trial. It's a little bit different, but it became standard of care now, because that is they feel that that's the best way. And then ultimately I ended up having cancer in my lymph nodes anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But the it's there are differences. There are differences in what people are trained in and what they have available to them. And even different hospitals, like some, you would have to have, you can have both like if you're going to have a mastectomy, you can have a breast surgeon and a plastic surgeon together. Sometimes they're 2 separate surgeries. There's a lot of different things. And I really encourage people to to learn as much as they can. And actually, to be honest with you, it kind of solidified, like, in my head, when the first physician told me I had breast cancer, I was like, okay, like, I really didn't believe it. I was pretty much in denial. By the time I got to the 3rd doctor, I was like, okay, I have breast cancer. It was sort of like I almost needed that repetition, which it's hard. It's hard to be able to do that, but you should, if you have a gut feeling that this isn't right or something isn't sitting well with you and that physician, you have every right to go for a second opinion. You have every right, regardless of whether you like that physician or not, just to get more information. Right. And I think you've shared, you could call your insurance company, right?
Yes.
Is that like, and they can set you up for a second opinion if you don't know where else to go.
Yeah. Jen, thank you so much for joining Everything Cancer podcast today. I so appreciate your time and your knowledge, and I'd love to have you back sometime. And thank you.
Oh, it's been fantastic, Jill. Thank you. Thank you for all your help.
Great. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here and listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Everything Cancer podcast. If you would like to show your support, there are links in the show notes to do so. The information in this podcast is not intended to be used for medical advice. For any healthcare concerns you may have, please consult with your own healthcare team. The staff here at Everything Cancer podcast will not be answering individual healthcare questions. Thank you, take care, and we'll see you back for the next episode of Everything Cancer. Bye-bye.